Greetings, everyone. My name is Charles COPPA, the not safe for work presidential candidate campaigning for a more direct democracy. And because simply saying, hey, I think we should all have a more direct democracy over and over and over again gets kind of dull and boring and repetitive, I make videos talking about current events and other things that interest me as a way to garner attention to this campaign and this concept. And beyond that, I like to start up conversations by having t-shirts. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Oh, there we go. So, here's the t-shirt. Hopefully you can see the back okay, because I can't see behind me. And of course my thing on the bottom, wherever the hell it is, hopefully it's right there on the camera. I don't want to show you my ass just for showing you my ass, but there you go. Because I'm going to need funds for this campaign, so instead of taking donations, I have a Teespring storefront to sell shirts in order to contribute to this campaign. Now, let's get into the topics. And the first topic is, today is a DUD. And by that, I mean it's don't upload day or dead upload day or whatever. So the whole thing that to protest YouTube and the COPPA regulation and the result of the FTC the settlement with YouTube. So let's talk about that first. So I don't really know how not uploading on a day is going to really draw attention, but then again, I haven't really looked into it. But as far as COPPA itself is concerned, what I do see a lot of going around on the internet is a lot of misconceptions about what COPPA is and what it does. And that's part of the reason why I do readings of legislation on this channel, is because you get a lot of times you get media outlets that will read a piece of legislation and they'll hone in on one or two lines, one or two aspects of the legislation, and then they'll put their spin or their hot takes or whatever on it. So I read the legislation on here so that you can, actually be directly exposed to it, and as I go through it, I interpret it. But the other reason why, another reason why I do this is because that is really the heart of what direct democracy is. We have legislation that's either proposed or existing, and we can read it for ourselves and determine whether we like it or not, and have discussions on how it's helpful and how it's hurtful. And the third reason is because, to oversimplify, I'm pretty stupid. Most of the people in the world are smarter than me. So if I can read this legislation and interpret it and understand what it means, chances are you can too. So maybe learn a little something from that. And the legislation that I read does come from the government website, congress.gov, so you can look at these all up on your own, and that's why I titled the videos by the legislation. It makes it easier for you to search for it and look at it yourself. But as far as COPPA is concerned, many people aren't going to be affected by COPPA directly in the way that they think they are. Now, I will agree that YouTube especially has come down and said they're going to use it as a way to, well, basically they said they're going to use it as a way to hammer the content creators. But let's not forget that YouTube is hammering on its content creators anyways, and they're deleting channels and other things, which is why I don't suspect my YouTube channel to last much longer, which is why I've started uploading on BitChute and Minds. And of course you can always follow me on Twitter at COPPA2020. But a lot of content creators are facing financial difficulties because all of a sudden their income has been taken away from them or diminished greatly. For one reason or through one method or another. And I would just like to point out that, has everybody forgotten about the days when you just got a P.O. box and had people mail you money? Because that's still a thing. So whether you can have your own personal concerns about it, but just saying, that's still a thing. So if you are a say independent journalist or some other not, shall we say, not for everybody like myself, content creator, then there are other methods that go around private corporations. You know, the government provided services have become the safe harbor for all the people who want to have an independent voice, until the corporations get in there and change that. But that's one thing I'm trying to prevent by running. So, you know, like I said, you can follow me on Twitter. And speaking of Twitter, as I've said before, I like to have discussions on Twitter. And now, when I get into discussions, debates, arguments, or whatever with somebody, I pretty much have a simple guideline. If you're going to argue a point, and I either counter argue it, or I ask you to back up that point, and you ignore that and go on to something else, I'm done. If you ask me to back up my argument, and I do, and you do not, for whatever reason, decide to look at the evidence or the argument I provided for you, then I'm done. If you say, this is how I think it should be, then I'm done. Now, most of those reasons are because I'm not going to talk to a wall. If I wanted to talk to a wall, I could just go back to teaching. But for the last one, everyone's entitled to their opinion. And I'm not going to try and make you change what you believe. I'm going to argue the facts with you. So you're entitled to your opinion, I'm entitled to my opinion, and at that point, if the discussion continues, it should only be, okay, well, how do we reach a compromise on the things that we both believe, think and believe in and whatever. And I don't want to really say believe in, because, as I've said before, the one thing I've learned in life is that the thing a person should be afraid of the most is the things that they believe in, because the more you believe in something, the less likely you are to question it. And that's why when I get into discussions and debates and whatnot with people, I like to try and strip away the beliefs. And I actually prefer to hold people accountable to their own beliefs, because I try not to have beliefs for what I previously stated. And ultimately, I like to try to get to the point where all the lines become blurred and everything becomes gray, because there is a spot, there, my friends, is the forefront of thought, the frontier of our understanding of ourselves and the universe and everything else, is when there is no clear, concise, and simple answer. And that is something I find to be exciting. So in my recent arguments on Twitter, the minimum wage came up, and someone asked me how I would change it. I said I would, instead of making the minimum wage a flat amount, I would make it percentage based on the location of the business. So anything within a 5-mile radius, the living expenses within a 5-mile radius of a work location would determine the minimum wage for that location. Now, one person said that minimum wage had no point, and it was created. What was it? It was created just to give people money or something. No, that's not really an argument. Basically, I pointed out to him that minimum wage came around at a time when people were still expected to get married, and that males were expected to pay for or financially support their female counterparts. And oh yes, the person said it's not meant to have to raise a family on. So I pointed that out, and this person said that I was not correct, which is okay. If I'm not correct, then correct me. And this person decided not to. They wanted to go argue something else. So you can see why I stopped there. Another person said that it's ridiculous that a person who is skilled labor, that gets trained to do a job, gets paid the same amount as someone who is unskilled labor. So when I pointed out that this is a strongman argument, that the person was saying that that person was basically saying that my point is that there should be a maximum wage, or that everybody should just have the same wage. This person did not point it out, or this person did not respond, and so I didn't see much of a point of continuing. But these people decided to go on anyways, and they wanted to bring out the argument, which is true, of if you raise the minimum wage, well, then costs around the location increase as well. However, the problem with this argument is that it ignores everything else that's going on financially with the economy and costs and whatnot. It ignores inflation, and if you need a refresher on how inflation works and why inflation is so detrimental to us, go back to video 76 on this channel. But yes, raising minimum wages does raise costs. You know what else raises costs? Inflation. So since the Federal Reserve is constantly making the dollar less and less valuable, why are you arguing that you should just sit there and take less and less money, less and less wealth every year, and not be compensated for an institution that you have no control over or no say over whatsoever? This baffles my mind. People have been conditioned to say, oh yes, inflation is a good thing because reasons. We all should become poor every year or every whatever period of time so that a few other people can get richer because reasons. Because it's good for the economy somehow that I can't afford to buy the same things today that I could buy yesterday. It's good for the economy that I can no longer afford to pay my rent, even though I've been working harder and harder every year. It's good for the economy that effectively wealth gets taken out of my pocket and put into the pockets of other people that do absolutely nothing for our economy. So when you talk about the negative effects of raising the minimum wage, let's have the whole conversation and talk about the negative effects of inflation. Let's talk about the negative effects of deregulation in the first place. Let's not forget why there's a minimum wage in the first place. Now, people will want to argue, oh, why should a 16-year-old be able to make the same amount as somebody in their 40s? Well, what more do you need to live on? If the 16-year-old is, shut up. If the 16-year-old is supporting themselves for whatever situation, are you going to deny that person the ability to be self-sustainable because reasons? These are very, very ridiculous arguments. I'm just going to be honest with you. There's no reason why any single person in this world should not be able to sustain themselves. There's no reason why you have to progress through a career path. If you want to spend the rest of your life flipping burgers, that's fine. You should just be able to live off of that. And you should be able to support yourself and at least one other person. Right? Because that's, the whole like getting together and all that kind of stuff anyways. So, I refuse the argument that raising the minimum wage or having the minimum wage is, at the end of the day, a bad thing. Because it's what allows us to survive against the few that would take everything from us and watch us die. That is my input to the conversation. What is yours? Because that is what direct democracy is all about, the conversation. And if direct democracy is a thing that you are interested in, then I urge you to spread the word about this campaign and this concept, and I thank you for your time.